Listen to the heartbeat.
Chevy is called the heartbeat of America for a reason. With SUVs made to move with your rhythm. The versatile Equinox tackles your entire day. The spacious Traverse fits your crew and your whole weekend. And Trax brings style with value you can count on. All infused with tech that has your back, so your drive always hits the right chord. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
This is the multiple award-winning GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine. Our content is aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything, from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 299 of the GardenDC podcast. In this episode, we talk with Helen Yost, author of Cultivating Native Plants for Pollinators, all about gardening through the year. The plant profile is on Queen Lily Ginger, and we share what's going on in the garden, as well as some upcoming local gardening events in the What's New segment. We close out with the last word on truth in gardening from Christy Page of Green Prints. This episode, we're joined by returning guest Helen Yost. She is a garden book author and pollinator enthusiast. Welcome back, Helen.
Thank you, Kathy.
Great to have you on. Last time we had you was August 2024. You were talking about garden planning and design, and your new book at that time, Beginner's Guide to Garden Planning and Design. And we talked about the simple steps to create a good garden design, and I'll link to that episode in our show notes. But today we have you on talking all about cultivating a garden for pollinators, and we're going to walk through the year of plants that we can grow. But before we dive into that, Helen, how have the last 2 years been? What have you been up to?
Well, it's really kind of been crazy. I will tell you, it took a year to write this book, so that was hard. It's really a hard book to write. So I put my whole heart and soul in it. But then in the last 6 months, I have renovated my garden. So I have a sustainable garden, and I've had that for years and years. But I wanted to take out some more non-native plants, especially invasive plants that I had mistakenly planted foolishly. And I widened my driveway. I added more pollinator plants. I just kind of simplified everything. I had a big birthday in March, and I said, you know what? I'm going to simplify my life a little bit, and that's what I did.
Excellent. Well, sounds like a great way to celebrate a milestone birthday with gifting yourself a garden renovation. And I visited your garden many, many, many years ago. And so let's tell listeners a little bit about where you garden and what your garden is like.
Okay. We are in zone 7-8. We just changed last year from zone 7B. I'm not quite sure I believe that, but I tend to buy plants that I have a zone wrapped around it, so I have a lot of wiggle room in the plants that I choose.
Excellent. And you're in a suburban/urban neighborhood with close by neighbors. Yep.
Yes, I am inside the Beltline, as they say, in Raleigh, and I did have a couple neighbors that maybe thought I went overboard, and then lucky for me, another gardener moved across the street, and she's as bad as I am.
Always nice.
They can't gang up on us because we can gang up on them now.
Mm-hmm. Well, always nice to have another gardener on the block.
Yes.
Because invariably, I always say a gardener and a non-gardener always live next to each other. It's never hardly ever, right?
Yeah,
a series of gardeners in a row, but it would be nice if we could all flock together. But, we have to be the example to start the block going.
Out of respect, though, I do tidy my garden, even though it's a wildlife habitat. And what I mean by that is I keep my hollow stems up about 2 feet, so native bees can nest in there. So it's not like it's big and floppy and just wild. It's tamed, but to the point where it benefits wildlife.
Excellent. So that brings us to your new book that just came out in April, and that's Cultivating Native Plants for Pollinators, a comprehensive guide to attracting birds, bees, and butterflies, native gardening for every U.S. region using sustainable practices. They make those titles longer and longer, Helen.
I know. Why is that? I don't know, because no one's ever going to remember that.
Yeah. So we'll just stick with the Cultivating Native Plants for Pollinators, the main title. I think they do a longer and longer for every keyword and search engine optimization as possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So your book covers a wide range of issues for wildlife habitat restoration to your sustainable home garden. And I think Doug Tallamy had endorsed the book, correct?
Very honored. Yes, he did.
That must be wonderful and gratifying. As you said, you spent a year plus working on it.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about just a portion of the book, which I think is fascinating, which is to create a year of pollinator supporting plants. I don't know if it was Gertrude Jekyll or one of the famous English gardeners who said your goal should be to have something in bloom every day in your garden.
I agree.
That's a goal, right? It's a goal. It's not always going to be possible, especially depending on your growing zone. But I think for those of us zone 6, 7, 8, it's getting there. We can have at least something in bloom each month, maybe not each day of the year.
Now, Kathy, I have something blooming each day of the year.
Ooh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I
have a lot of plants.
Yes. I would say I probably do, but there are some bleak days in February that I'm just looking out there and I'm like, dude, I don't even know if I have even a hellebore is probably not even surfacing. But we'll walk through the year and talk about that. But before we dive into the year of blooms, let's talk in general about supporting our pollinators. And of course, on the podcast, we've had guests talk about all the things that we do in our habitat to create, a water source, a protective area, some shrubbing and habitat for nesting for birds. But what do you recommend most, Helen, for first steps for a pollinator supporting garden?
Well, I mean, they all work in concert. So you need water supply, and not just one. A regular bird bath is great. Something down below so the box turtle can have a sip. And, I have several water sources. What I do is make sure that they are refreshed within every 4 days during the mosquito breeding season, and they won't produce adults. But you can also put mosquito dunks in there, and they work really well, and they don't affect anything but the wigglers, the larvae of the mosquito. Mm-hmm. And then there's food. I don't have as much supplemental food as I used to. I really try and rely on the plants, but I do put out a suet for the woodpeckers. I got a lot of different woodpeckers that visit, and it's just so much easier to put out a suet. And even in this heat that we have had, I have not had any melting. So I was happy about that. And then cover, of course. And each type of wildlife is going to nest in different areas. So biodiversity is best. So like for a hummingbird, for example, they nest between 10 and 40 feet. No wonder I've never seen one. I've never seen our ruby-throated hummingbird nest. So there's that. And then, of course, there's a place to raise their young. And either for birds, it's either cavity dweller or a nesting on a tree limb. So, yeah, we have to provide a little of everything. I have several bird houses, and I keep a snag. Not everybody can keep a snag, but if it's going to be a danger to your house or to your neighbors, you don't want to do that. But if you have the opportunity, and we were cutting down a tree because it's dead, leave a snag. The woodpeckers will really love to be nesting in there.
And there's always leaving a little bit of bare soil for some of our native bees because they don't create like a nest or a hive that we see
Yes,
with the honeybees.
that's exactly right. And 70% of all our native bees nest underground. And so, not to be mistaken by the wasp, the yellow jackets that we get. Oh my gosh, they're horrible. I've been stung probably 6 times. I know where I was on every one of them. But anyway, that's a wasp. So people get freaked out when they see something come out of the ground. But you'll know if it's a wasp, a yellow jacket, because it will attack you, and they can sting, multiple times. It's not like a honeybee that's going to lose its stinger and die. So anyway, queen bees in particular, I try to do that for them because their whole brood will be gone. She's gonna nest by herself, and so she'll come out on a warm day. You know how we get these freakishly warm days? She'll come out and search for some nectar, even though she's well provisioned. She still, wants to make sure she can get out and spread her wings, so to speak.
And I do know some honeybee keepers that put out sugar water supplemental for their hives, especially in wintertime.
That's right. Yeah, you're not going to see the bees come out as much as say a bumblebee or a carpenter bee because they're the Goldilocks, right? It can't be raining, can't be wet, it has to be a certain temperature. So but they will come out, and I see them on my plants in the winter if the day gets warm enough. And we always have these, well, I'm saying freakishly warm days, but that's not it at all. I think it's becoming a new pattern.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had the up and down in the mid-Atlantic where you get a 60-degree day and can go, roller skating on Christmas instead of ice skating. And then you'll get like a 20-degree day, then
Yeah,
you'll get
yeah.
zapped, and it'll usually be overnight and it'll be a drastic drop. And I feel like a lot of our wildlife, our pollinators, it could take them unawares. So it's always
Yes,
nice to have something supplemental for them out there. And you were mentioning clay also as a support for our pollinators.
I do. I put out these just terracotta and I fill it with clay, which, there's no shortage of around here. And I keep it moist, and it's good for the mason bees. The mason bees, as the name suggests, they're going to seal their tubes, their nesting sites, with a masonry type product, and clay is one of them, and also silt can be one, just whatever is nearby. Another reason not to have everything highly mulched, because they need to be able to access the soil.
And so we have those pollinators that are in the stems of plants that you mentioned before that you leave up for the winter time, those that are ground dwelling, those that are nest dwelling, and then we have the hives of honeybees that aren't our native bees, correct, but are still
That's
important.
They are important, and I think it's just common knowledge that although they're not native, they're so critical that I used to say European honeybee to make a point, but now I just say honeybee because they're just really critical, particularly for the agricultural crops.
Yeah, and if you're growing any type of fruit trees or berries, like you have a little set of blueberries, you definitely want those honeybees around.
You do, in fact, but also blueberries is a specialist bee that go on them. Also the honeybee, but they're supporting a specialist bee, and so those kind of things are important too.
Okay, let's turn to our year of pollinator plants, mainly pollen sources, right? So we can talk a little bit about pollen and nectar, and there's a difference. Some plants
Yes,
provide both, some
yes,
are high in one, not so much in the other. So let's talk about that for a second.
yes. Okay, well, if we start in January, it is our quietest month for blooms, and I don't really have a whole lot of Southeast natives to suggest, but I have a lot of distribution plants and I have a lot of non-natives that are worthy to have in your garden. And I know the Oregon grape holly mahonia is not everybody's favorite, but when those yellow flowers are in bloom, and the bees are out. They're all over it. They're not invasive for me here. They may be for other people, so I don't want to encourage you to put it in your garden if they are invasive for you.
Yeah. And there's different Mahonias. There are,
Yes.
those that are native to the North American continent. Usually it's the Asian one that's said to be invasive.
Yes.
In some areas. And I'm going to ask you to define for our listeners distribution plant.
Okay. Well, distribution plants, I learned this from Lady Bird Johnson. Because when you go to their website, they talk about native and they talked about distribution. And distribution is a native plant to the United States, but will grow in your hardiness zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for those of us, especially mid-Atlantic growers, Echinacea, I think, is a great example of that. So that's really a Great Plains meadow plant.
Yes,
it does fabulous for us, and it's mainly sold under native plants in our local garden centers. Not too many people are going to argue that that's not a great addition to your garden.
I hear you. I agree completely. So anyway, and you may not agree with all of mine. Like, I love camellias, and in January we'll start seeing our Camellia japonicas that will go through late April, and you'll have the honeybees and the bumblebees on it, and it'll carry over. There's like some overlap between the japonica and the sasanquas, but they're just very important because when they pop out, they're looking for some nectar.
Yeah, I think they're particularly desperate in that late winter time where you might have had some annuals go through December, right? Like, there are years that I've had impatiens and petunias in baskets through December, but usually by early January, nope, that's all gone into the compost pile. So January, February, early March, it's getting desperate out there, not just for the bees and birds are running out of seeds and things. So most wildlife is looking for stuff. So camellia, especially, I love it because it's usually covered in blooms, lots and lots of blooms if you have a nice healthy camellia. But also I'm thinking maybe the more open flowers where you can access like the open pollen rather than the filled in kind of rose type camellias.
Right. Yeah, you're going to see those more in the japonicas.
And that's both the honeybees and our native bumblebees. I love to see a bumblebee on, like, you go out on a winter day, like you say, one of those freakishly warm days, and you're like, ooh, the bumblebees are out. They might have been away for several weeks in some little crevice or something, but they are out and active and ready.
Yeah, and I love seeing that. So, yeah. And then winter aconite, the Lenten roses, winter jasmine are all, non-native plants, but they provide nectar. The Lenten rose, I just, comes with a warning, cut off the seed heads before they ripen because you'll have a million of them. But otherwise, I like them in the garden, but you got to, some of these plants just come with a responsibility. That's, and I say that about, like, a lot of things, like building bee bungalows or providing nectar for the hummingbirds. It comes with a responsibility. You just can't just put it up and then be done. You've got to take charge of it and do what it needs to do. It needs to be done when it needs to be done.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Lenten rose just because the sepals, what you think of as the flowers, stay looking good and fresh for months. And as you said, you can cut off the little seed heads if you have a reseeding issue or you're next to like a parkland or somewhere.
Right.
And the winter aconite, I was just going to have a quick aside that a lot of people confuse it with an invasive. It is not the winter aconite. It has that like little Elizabethan collar around the little yellow flower. So that can tell you the difference between some of the other ranunculus that are running wild in that late winter time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I eradicate them from where I work, and I've eradicated it at my home. Yeah, and the winter aconite is also really hard to get established in your garden, and it doesn't transplant well. So,
Yeah,
but
unlike lesser celandine, which is like all you
yeah,
have to do is walk through it once and you brought it home. So
yes,
winter
yes.
aconite you would be ordering from a bulb company, baby it for the first year or two, and then usually a small patch will form.
And it's such a beautiful little flower.
hmm Yeah, that yellow, especially when you have like ice or a little bit of snow on the ground, is such a relief to have out there in the landscape. Which brings us to my most hated month of the year, Helen, which is February.
Mm.
It can't be shorter enough for me because that always to me seems like it is our coldest, windiest, just not hospitable month to be out in the garden.
Well, I have a different perspective. We will
Mm-hmm.
talk about February. I don't like the darkness of January.
Okay.
That is my worst month.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get to February, I said, okay, March is just around the corner. I can handle this. That's your attitude, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Stay
Mm-hmm.
positive.
Yep. So in February, you might have some of those lingering January blooms, right?
Yes, definitely.
But now we're starting to see things wake up, like the sap rising in the trees. You can almost like
Yes.
feel it in the breeze, like you said, the days lengthening. So what are we looking for in to add to our garden to support our pollinators?
Well, if you have room, the red maple is probably the number one to plant. It's a critical for the honeybees and the native bees like bumblebees, mining bees, sweat bees. It's an critical early source of nectar and pollen. And then a fun one is bloodroot, which you can plant in the shade and there's always room for that. Non-native are the quince, which can look kind of gnarly from time to time, so I
Mm-hmm.
tend to cut mine down to the ground each year. Celadon poppies, which I like, and they do spread, but it's really good for early spring bees. Galanthus or snowdrops, fun. Winter daphne, just don't look at it in the wrong way or it'll just die on you.
Yeah, winter Daphne can be a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
Daphne odora, because if it doesn't have the exact right conditions, it won't establish,
Yeah.
or you have it for 3 to 5 years and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and it's dead and it
Yes.
doesn't tell you why. So don't be surprised. It wasn't you, gardeners. It wasn't you.
Yes.
That's the way of Daphne. And on the flowering quince, when you said you cut it back to the ground, I think that's a great idea. You're right. It can be very like rangy looking.
Yeah.
And also my bunnies, resident bunnies, love to chew on it. So I think they're doing me a favor by
Oh,
cutting it back to the ground every year for me.
there you go.
I don't know why they love to chew on quince, the flowering quince, but they find it delicious. And I'm not too mad at them as long as I get a few blooms every
Yeah.
spring out of them.
Yeah.
In the very, very earliest of, like you said, end of February, early March is usually when I see them.
Well, my rabbits are after my coneflowers and black-eyed Susans. So I
Mm-hmm.
put little cages around them. I found these really cute cloches that are metal, and I put them on top of the plant, and they can go to somebody else. God, they can go across the street to my neighbor. She's got a lot of things they can eat. I shouldn't say that. I love her to death.
Yes, but bunnies, that is the time of year they're proliferating. So as we move into March, of course, a little bit longer days for sunshine. We're getting more milder temperatures, and it seems like the whole world is waking up then.
I know, and I love it. And it's my birthday month, so it's a good month for me anyway. But did you know that it is time that when the columbine are in bloom is when your hummingbirds are expected to arrive. But they
That's good to know.
arrived they arrived late this year. I don't know if y'all up there, but I mean, always by April they're there. I put my feeders up in March, but they didn't show up until mid-April this year.
I think because we had that big late frost, that might have
Mhm.
set things back a bit. And when you're saying the columbines, you're talking particularly about the red eastern columbine.
Correct.
So we
Correct.
have Colorado columbines, like the white and the blue purples, which I
Mhm.
love, but the ones that are native to the East Coast are usually like a reddish with a yellow cup, I want to say. The beak of the aguilega is the eagle's beak, so it's got it, or it could be on the peachy side of things too.
Yes, yes. But I talk about other columbines in the book. So it covers, Colorado and California and that sort of thing.
And it's also a host plant
Yes,
for the columbine dusty wing. Is that a
it
butterfly?
is. Yes, it is. And so, to me, I think I'm always touting that before I like the beauty of a plant, I like what they do for the birds, bees, and butterflies more, even more so. So like I grow poppy seeds when they come out in May, and the bees go crazy over it. And although they are a pretty flower and pretty plant, I just love to see the bees. And then when the flowers go, they leave the seed head and the goldfinch. I think the goldfinch is just as pretty collecting seed as the flower itself.
Yeah, I love to see a goldfinch, flitting around your garden from some flowers to, even the goldenrod and all around, especially we're recording, in late August, and that's when I start to see them really proliferate around.
Yes.
But I think it's also, Helen, because they're more noticeable when they're colored up at this time of year. And maybe in the winter, when they don't have their bright yellow coloring, you just think they're, LBB, little brown bird. You're not noticing them as much then. I call them all the little LBBs because you're like, I can't differentiate between these guys.
Yeah.
So back to March, that's when we're looking at our earliest flowering trees as well.
Yes, and it's a host butterfly plant for the spring azure, which is nice. And of course, pollinators sip the nectar. But my favorite, and it's so underused, is the Corinthian cherry dogwood. It's not native, but it is emerging in March. And it's just such a beautiful pollinator plant.
Cornelian cherry?
The Cornus moss.
Yep, Cornus moss. Yeah, I think that one's a gorgeous one and has basically covered in bees. Sometimes you'll see a lot of bees because, again, it's a time of year when they don't have many sources and they're like, yes, this thing is covered in blooms.
Yeah. It looks like, palm.
Like little yellow sprigs all along.
Yeah.
And it's not as a lot of trees that don't, have the leaves before the flowers. That's when it's that time of year, like when redbuds and others, that you're first seeing the flowers, then it leaves out. So that's always fun to see.
Yeah, I agree. So.
And I was thinking also of witch hazels. So that's, we have our native witch hazel, February, March, coming into bloom. And that's another small tree or shrub where you're seeing the flowers first along the stems and branches, along with the red buds, and you could really see the pollinators active at that point.
Yeah, and I start seeing them even earlier than that. So, but yeah, I mean, it just depends on your hardiness zone. And like you said, the actual what kind of winter are we having? We had the worst drought this year than we had in 2007, and the main reason is it started in the winter. See, in 2007, the drought started in July, but yeah, we had a really bad, y'all did too, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're finally seeming like, knock on wood, coming out of it. But yeah, for a lot of the mid-Atlantic, it's been 2 years of drought, or at least under, on the edge of drought for many regions too.
Right.
But when you don't get the moisture in the ground in the winter, that's really bad for the woody plants, especially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now we're moving into official spring and April, and the garden is in bloom. So there's lots and lots of choices at that point.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of phlox, particularly the garden phlox. And I have just about every color. I think they're just so beautiful. And we were talking earlier about Jenna, the Phlox paniculata Jenna, which has tinier flowers, so it's not as showy of a phlox. But again, I am choosing my plants based on what wildlife comes. And so there's, butterflies just flock to that plant.
Mm-hmm. And these are more like the ground cover moss woodland phlox that are in springtime, correct?
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Versus like Jenna, which is tall and later summer into fall, which is, it's funny that they're both the same phlox
I know.
species. You don't think of
I
them as related
agree.
at all. Yep.
No. Yeah, and I should. Well, so I guess when I say various phlox, they're starting in April and they're going all the way through frost, really. So I love them.
Yeah, and then you have the various verbena, which same thing. You can get
Yes.
verbena from spring through fall, different varieties. And also I was thinking about some shrubs where if you plant it right, you have early, mid, and late blooming azaleas.
Yes.
And same thing with a lot of that's with our native azaleas, can really stretch into July even.
Yes.
But yeah.
And they are a hummingbird favorite, so that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And how about you have listed in your book also the crossvine bignonia that has a long season of bloom. It just doesn't bloom once and then go out after a week.
Yeah, it's a beauty, and you see a lot of bee butt in there. Because the long tongue bumblebees love to go all the way deep into flower. So they're easy to spot.
That reminds me, Helen, I was doing a social media post series a long time ago that I just called bee butts. And so I would just use hashtag bee butt because I was like, every time I was trying to take a close up of a particular flower, there was always a bee butt in there. And I'm like, I was waiting for the bee to leave. And then I'm like, why am I not taking pictures of these bee butts and sharing them? Because they're wiggling around in there and they're having a good time.
I love it. I love it.
And there's so many things to choose in April and then into May. You're also adding annuals to your garden, lots of different flowers, but mainly in your book, of course, you're talking about our native perennials.
Well, yeah, and I don't tend to plant annuals anyway. And because I'm able to have continuous bloom with my perennials, but annuals are really good because of the long season that they have, and they can provide nectar to the wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with a lot of our native perennials, it could be up for a week or two, and then that's it. You might have the seed heads after that and other uses for the plant. So
Yes.
I'm thinking about our bee balms, Monarda. So that might be a couple weeks of the actual bloom, but then the plant still has services beyond its bloom time.
I agree. And one of the things I do with my bee balm is about May, when it's about 3 feet tall, I cut it. I cut it back by half because it gets to be too long and leggy in my garden. And you're going to delay the bloom by doing that, but I find it very effective. And maybe it's because mine isn't an absolute full sun, so they flop over. I find that if I cut, then they'll be stouter, and I like it for that reason.
That's the famous Chelsea chop that everybody talks about. And so that's usually mid-May, end of May. It doesn't have to be that exact timing, but that's good for some of the later bloomers. So then you can stagger and get that bloom every day in your garden.
Exactly. Yeah, I do stagger as well. So I always have blooms. And I just recently came across a white variety of the digama. So I was pretty happy about that. I don't know. I can't trace it to know what it is specifically. But I like it. It's just like the scarlet, but it's white.
That's interesting. We'll have to look out for that one. And then, so also in May, you're getting all the various coreopsis.
Yeah, and I do like the coreopsis. I found moonbeam the other day, which hadn't been on the market forever. I had a hard time finding it. I don't know what the issue was, but anyway, because it kept dying. Maybe now that we're zone 8, it's doing better. But I just put one in the other
For
day.
me, I find maybe it's not the heat so much for coreopsis, it's the drainage. Like clay soil and coreopsis are not best friends.
Yeah. Well, I have the best soil in 6 states, so that's really not a problem for me.
Yeah, I find I have to put coreopsis either at like the edge of pavers or driveway, something where I can get some good drainage. Otherwise, it kind of just peters out for me.
Got it.
And that one's a great one for both butterflies and, various kinds of bees. Everybody loves coreopsis.
Yes, yes. Even the short bee can get in there. So, but even the long-tongued bees, long-tongued bees can get into just about anything. The short-tongued bees have to have a flat surface, so they can't, dig around in there like a long-tongued bee can.
And I was thinking also about things like the blue bottle gentian or the gentian flowers that the bees kind of tear into to get access to that. And I'm like, even if you're a short-tongued bee, maybe you can rip your way into that flower, the side of it. I always like to see them kind of struggle and get in there.
And that's one beautiful flower. I have one, and it comes back every year.
And that one's so much fun to watch the bees interact with.
The other one, which is not a native, is our salvia, like the blue salvia or black and blue, because you'll see the long-tongued bees, which can reach in there, but they always nectar rob. So they'll go out to the the calyx and get their sugar water from there. They won't pollinate the plant, but there's plenty of other plants that will pollinate for them. But I love to watch that. I just love, that's one of my favorite things. And when anyone's in my garden and I see it, I point it out because, they're like, wow.
Yeah, I don't know about the phrase nectar robbing or nectar stealing is a funny phrase to me because I'm like, well, is it really stealing? But yes, it's kind of like a sideways entry thing.
I did a post on my Substack on the nectar robbing and how it's done. And, so it's just real quick on this Substack. It's not a blog. It's really interesting. It's a writer's platform, or majority of it is. I use it as a writer's platform. And I am not going to write another traditional book. I'm actually writing my next book on Substack. And see, there's a free version, and then there's, you can commit if you like someone's writing, you can give them, $5 a month or whatever. But I'm doing that because I want more control over what I'm writing and what I'm sharing. And I don't think the world is ready for sustainable gardening. They think it's all hippie, but it is the way to go in our changing world. And so I write about sustainable gardening on my Substack.
Yeah, I think it's a great platform to support your favorite writers and creators because obviously as the daily newspapers dry up and other media platforms, that's where a lot of your favorite columnists and people are gravitating towards.
Yes. And some really good writers out there.
And so let's see, let's turn back to May. We've got our penstemon, our beard tongue.
Yes. That's a real floppy one for me, but because it's not really tall, when it flops, I don't mind so much because I can be pretty persnickety. That is the truth about my plants. I like them to be perky and upright.
Yeah, I'd say penstemon is a good reseeder, which is why I like it. It tends to make a little colony, and you do see great pollinator action on it. And there's a lot of cultivars being introduced in penstemons, so like shorter, less floppy ones, right? Darker foliage, thinking like of dark towers with like a pinker flower rather than a pale white. What do you think about nativars, cultivars in the garden?
I just wrote a post on Substack about that. I'm not sure why people cringe, gardeners, maybe horticulturists cringe at the thought of a nativar. A nativar, of course, is a native cultivar. And so maybe it's redundant, but if you can say the word native in something, I'm always happy. So I don't have that issue with my nativars. Cultivars, it really just depends. Like on echinacea or on our coneflowers, a double a double flower is just not useful in a wildlife habitat because the pollen has been switched for petals, and so they can't get to the pollen if at all. So while they're pretty, and I'm not saying don't plant them, because if you like pretty echinacea, by all means plant them, and there are a lot of different ones, but I tend to stick to the pure species.
And then let's move into June, the Agastaki. That's another one that's getting a lot of new breeding going on.
I know it.
A lot of great colors. I love the peachy ones, and also more resistant to our clay soil, I'm going to say, because it's more of a southwest, almost desert type plant. For us, it can be a little tough in the mid-Atlantic.
It can. And I talk about various ones in the book, of course, but there are ones that were cultivated that are tall, and those that are short. I happen to have a tall one, so that's another one I have to cut back, but that's okay because it's a beauty.
And then for June, you have so much going on, especially in the native pollinators, from the Silphium cup plants to all the Rudbeckias, and I'm talking like all the Rudbeckias. There's lots of native straight species to choose from, and then of course lots of new breeding going on. And then you had mentioned the black and blue salvia before, so we have our salvias and sages, which are, hummingbird favorites as well as butterflies and bees.
Yes. And we shouldn't forget to mention that the Various pensamon is also a host butterfly plant for the checker spot.
And then in June, you have the Joe Pye weed, and I think there's some shorter ones that are more friendly for the garden.
Yes.
Because I don't know about you, Helen, but I've not done like the Chelsea chop on the straight species Joe Pye weed, but I just don't think that's going to work. It's still going to shoot up there and be a super tall plant.
I don't either, and I do grow it. I grow various ones like Little Joe that doesn't get as big, but I just make sure I put it in the back of the bed so that it has, plenty of space to grow. And it's what's interesting too about Joe Pye weed. It's really one of my favorite plants. And when Doug Talames did the research on the number of pollinators that use host plants on various trees and pollinators, it's a host of 47 different pollinators, moths and butterflies. I just find that fascinating. And yet you don't see the plant all chewed up or anything. So, they're respectful.
Yeah. I mean, you might see a little bit of chewing on the leaves, but you would hardly notice it. It's such a robust plant. And then there's all our mountain mints. There's like a fine leaf mountain mint, a wider one, all these different mountain mints, and then it has a great smell. But I use it in our little pollinator strip at our community garden because it's such a tough plant that if I don't get over there to water it, who cares?
Right, yeah, and it will multiply for you, so you'll always have more to share. But I like it. I like it a lot too, and I talk about, of course, in the book various ones you can grow, and the range of their bloom time can expand as you put in different species.
And then once we're in August, sometimes the garden can feel kind of tired, like petered out.
Yeah.
But I think this is the time of year, the lobelias, both the cardinalis, but also my white and blue ones are blooming right now. And the goldenrods are coming on like gangbusters.
I think the goldenrod is one of the most underused plants. It's so important to have fall blooming nectar sources for migrating butterflies like the monarch and for long-tongued bees to stock up before they hibernate and that sort of thing. We really tend to forget about summer because school starts, right? And football games are on and people don't want to be out in the garden. The whole mind shift changes, and it's really doing our wildlife a disservice if we're not planting for migrators in August, September, October.
And I think that's also one of the most beautiful times in the Mid-Atlantic gardens. Everything is filled out, looking
Yeah.
good, kind of
Yeah.
humming along on its own. You've pretty much done your planting and work for the year. And then, of course, in the fall, you can dig and divide things and move things around if you'd like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. There's no end to the joy that gardening brings.
and then we have our asters, and like we talked about earlier, where you can have early, mid, and late blooms to stagger. You know, there's so many types of asters out there.
Yeah.
And you were saying that you think goldenrod is underused. I feel like asters are underused. People plant more mums than asters for fall when they're thinking
Yes.
fall.
Yes. And don't you want something that's just going to come back for you, right? So I think we've gotten sterilized somehow, thinking pretty is what's important and not the value to the wildlife.
I also think it might be convenience. You know, you're at the supermarket, there's a big mum right there. Bam, put it in the cart, right? So if it's
I've
not
done that.
readily
I've done that.
available, yep. So just convenience and what's available for a lot of people. But
Yeah, no, I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying, you could plant asters and have them from August through frost.
For sure. So we're moving into September, and then you've got your blue mist flower. I love the blues and purples of autumn. Like we always think of autumn as being yellow, orange, red, rusty colors, but I'm like, there's a whole spectrum in the blue purple range too for fall.
Well, and let's not forget pink. I know obedient plant is very aggressive, but boy, does it have a nice flower in the fall, providing nectar and pollen. So it's another great native.
Yep. And we have our sunflowers, the native sunflowers, the helianthus. I was just thinking about some of the edible sunflowers, right? That some people are going for crops and they're always trying to keep the birds off of them or the squirrels from not stealing the sunflower heads, which they will start to do. But
Exactly.
some just grow extra, right? Grow enough.
Yeah. And the swamp sunflower is a host plant for the painted lady, who's such a beautiful butterfly, and various checker spots.
Yep. And then you have the native witch hazel again, the other camellia, Sasanqua. So that's going into October. And then in November, what are you seeing in your garden?
Well, it's, there's a lot of carryover. I have the aromatic asters. I have witch hazel. I have a lot of blue mist. I got to thin it out, I'll tell you. But I love it. And I don't even think it's sold. Is that a pass-along plant? Or is it in the garden centers? I've never had to worry about it because there's so much of it in my garden. Someone shared it with me. So, and then once it takes off, it takes off.
For me, it's the white snake root. I was given a little pot of that, and it has taken over the world, Helen.
I wish mine would.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that just loves to reseed itself. So that's one of those that is a big pass-along plant for native plant lovers.
Yeah. And then in December, I'm just really focusing on the birds and the berries and that sort of thing. Obviously, camellias are still blooming. Blue mast might be, it depends on when we have our frost. It's getting later and later every year. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I would say the berries that I'm looking at usually at that time of year. So I'm thinking about elderberry, aronia, the things that I like to eat too. That
Exactly.
Also the birds like that you're keeping up, and beautyberry. That was one, Helen, that I was going to say that's usually by Thanksgiving for us in the DC area, but I can't hold on to it. It's like a week later, they're stripped. They're gone from the shrub. I'm
really?
Like, you can't leave them on a little bit longer. And I think it's the cardinals who are doing it. They really love that. And then they love the seeds when I leave the hosta flowers up. They love to raid those seeds as well. And I'm like, I was leaving those stalks for looks, honey. but yes, they seem to be a big treat for them. So it's funny what they go after. Then we have our native hollies, of course, that you're looking for, I would say, more like holiday time decorating with
Yes,
those.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Well, and the beauty berry is edible.
Mm-hmm.
I write about that in my book, Good Berry, Bad Berry. It's very astringent if you just take it off the vine, but it really sugars up and makes a great jam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you can get to them before the birds do.
I was going to say, if I ever get enough of a crop for myself. But no, they are welcome to them. So that wraps up our year of plants for pollinators. And I wanted to ask how our listeners can contact you to find out more, Helen.
Well, you can find me and follow me on helenyost.substack.com, or you can email me at helenyost@gmail.com.
Great. And so you have the new book out, which I'll link in our show notes as well, and listeners can check that out. And any final thoughts, Helen, maybe for the beginning or urban or small space, maybe a gardener who only has space to put 1 or 2 plants to lengthen the season, what would you recommend they grow?
Oh, wow, now. My goodness, because camellias are huge, but there's a ground cover camellia called Cleopatra. So, and camellias are very drought tolerant, which I don't think a lot of people know.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do asters just because they're not going to get too huge. Like stay away from swamp sunflower, and blue mist flower will help you in the winter. In the fall, tick seeds are not going to be very big. Bee balm will be perfect if you cut them in, if you do the Chelsea chop on them. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Helen.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kathy.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of the lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf, and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn, or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
Listen to the heartbeat. Chevy is called the heartbeat of America for a reason. With SUVs made to move with your rhythm. The versatile Equinox tackles your entire day. The spacious Traverse fits your crew and your whole weekend. And Trax brings style with value you can count on. All infused with tech that has your back, so your drive always hits the right chord. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Hey friends, Olivia from Ollie. Between new routines and the ultimate group project known as parenting, you need science-backed solutions that work with your life. That's where Ollie comes in. Start your mornings off right with multis made to support nutrition and immune health. Choose from our lineup of gut-supporting probiotics, and we've got occasional sleep support to help the whole fam chase their big dreams. Head back to class with the #1 gummy supplement brand. Stock up on Ollie.com today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Queen Lily Ginger plant profile. Queen Lily Ginger, Curcuma petiolata, is an ornamental tropical flower with colorful summer blooms and lush foliage. It's also known as hidden lily or hidden cone ginger. The cone-shaped flowers have colorful bracts that come in white, pink, purple, and yellow. Inside are the smaller true flowers. Queen Lily looks great in a tropical-style garden, and also makes a good cut flower. It's not a true lily, but is a member of the ginger family. It's native to Southeast Asia and is hardy to USDA zones 8 through 10. Queen lily ginger grows 1 to 3 feet high and about 1 to 2 feet wide. It does best in part shade, protected from harsh afternoon sun, planted in rich, well-draining soil. Keep the soil evenly moist. This relative of turmeric is not considered to be edible, as the rhizome is tough and quite bitter tasting. It can be grown as a garden plant or in containers. It attracts butterflies and bees and is deer resistant. It spreads by rhizomes, and the clumps can be divided after several years to propagate it. Queen lily goes dormant in the fall and will start to yellow and die back in the cooler weather. You can then dig and store the rhizomes, similar to dahlias and gladiolas. Or, if you have it in a container, bring in the potted plant before the first frost. Keep it dry and cool, around 55 degrees, and start watering it again in the spring when the new shoots appear. Queen lily ginger, you can grow that. What's new in the garden this week? Well, I'm enjoying the flowers of my reblooming lilacs and also looking up into my crepe myrtles, loving the long-lasting flowers and the beautiful peeling bark. Over at the community garden plot, we're harvesting purple pole beans and the tiny cucamelons. In garden tips that we shared this week on social media, we talked all about harvesting edible plants, including that you can tell if okra is fresh by bending the tip of the pod back with your thumb. If it snaps off cleanly, it's good. If it bends and doesn't break, then it has crossed the line and is too tough or woody to eat. In local gardening events, if you're in the Washington, D.C. region, you might want to attend DC Plant Week 2026, an annual celebration of plants, their purpose, and the place we call home. There's workshops, plant sales, plant bingo, plant art, and more. You can find out the whole schedule at dcplantweek.com. And then Edible Landscaping is hosting their annual Pawpaw Festival on Saturday, September 5th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can join them for a day of fruit tasting tours and a nursery-wide plant sale. Go to ediblelandscaping.com to find out more. They are located in Afton, Virginia. And the Maryland Native Plant Society's Fall Conference features presentations, workshops, and field trips. It's taking place on September 12th and 13th at the Conference Center at the University of Maryland in College Park and at various field trip locations. You can discover the unique landscapes of Maryland's Piedmont and Western Coastal Plain, from globally rare ecosystems such as magnolia bogs to the resilient and prevalent oak history forest. Details about that are at mdflora.org, and that includes in-person events and a native plant sale.
This is The Last Word by Christy Page at Greenprints with Truth in Gardening by Pat Stone. I recently read a label on a box of naturally decaffeinated tea bags explaining that, unlike some decaffeinated tea, this brand naturally removes caffeine by using ingredients found in nature. Truth in labeling. What a revolution it has wrought. We need now, though, to press such stern standards of forthright fortitude to gardening. Alas, I fear truth in gardening will not be found in my lifetime, at least not if I have anything to do with it. That's not because I don't tell the truth. I do. It's all the other gardeners who lie. They're the ones who exaggerate, telling all their comrades about their snowdrops, daylilies, and autumn asters are all blooming flawlessly this summer, that their tomatoes have been bearing since March, that their crabgrass scuttled away and their quackgrass quacked up, their spider mites didn't bite, their slugs had no punch. Of course, such hyperbolic horticulturists only offer such testimony when their over at your garden. Why, you must come visit their place, but oh no, next Saturday would not be good. Got to go to their teenage daughter's kindergarten reunion Saturday. Wednesday, oh dear, that's the day all the cactus get dry cleaned. The other kind of plant provocator, of course, is the understater. Nothing's growing this year. It's all a flooded, parched, wilted, frozen, ungerminated, overgrown, 169% total wreck. The only rose that the Japanese beetles didn't eat committed harikari in disgrace, while the teenager got the van stuck in reverse and backed over the entire vegetable plot. No, they're thinking of giving up gardening altogether and trying something else with their free time, like skateboarding the Appalachian Trail. Me, I belong to the understaters. Actually, I really am a minority of one, the only truthful gardener I know. My garden is a mess. Planted too late, weeded too little, neglected too much, watered none at all. I discovered long ago that, for me, truth in gardening is the way to go. It has two great advantages. One, nobody believes me. Things couldn't possibly look that bad. Rather, I clearly have to be a horticultural Houdini who can make the boulders bloom. Two, since by this reasoning my garden must be a vegetative nirvana, I get bonus points for being so modest. The result is I can tell everyone how horrible my garden really is, and they think it and I are wonderful. Truth in gardening? I'm telling you, it's the way to go. This has been The Last Word by Christy Page at greenprints.com.
Thank you for listening to GardenDC. This episode was made by real humans. It was produced and hosted by myself, Kathy Jentz. The Let the Sunshine music interludes are by James Mulvaney. If you like this episode, you may also enjoy listening to GardenDC Podcast, Episode 141, Nature's Best Hope. Episode 156, Gardening for Wild Bees. Episode 207, Garden Planning and Design. Episode 47, Pollinator Victory Gardens. You can become a listener supporter by going to the link in our show notes. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to WashingtonGardener.com or WashingtonGardener.blogspot.com. You can find Washington Gardener on Twitter or X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Pinterest at WDC Gardener, and on Facebook at Washington Gardener Magazine. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app. Please take a moment to share us on social media with hashtag GardenDC and with your gardening friends so other gardeners can find us too. Happy gardening.